What if you found a house in the middle of a forest and the woman inside already knew your name? 13-year-old Ethan loved exploring forgotten places and turning them into stories. One afternoon, he followed a group of children deep into the forest. But when he tried to speak to them, they ran. As darkness fell, Ethan discovered a house that shouldn't have been there. An old woman welcomed him inside and offered to tell him a story. Ethan opened his notebook and began to write. But then, words he hadn't written began appearing on the page, and the story wasn't about someone else. It was about him. This is that story. Welcome to the Unseen Hour. What if you met a group of children in a forest and every one of them ran away the moment they saw you? 13-year-old Ethan Miller loved places most people avoided. Abandoned buildings, forgotten roads, old railway tracks, anything with a story. He carried a small notebook everywhere he went, filling its pages with strange places, people he met, and stories he invented. His mother always told him the same thing. One day, Ethan, your curiosity is going to get you into trouble. He always laughed. Until that Saturday afternoon. The forest began less than a mile from the village. People called it Black Hollow. Nobody really knew why. There were no signs, no official warnings. Just an old dirt path disappearing between the trees. Ethan had heard stories about the place since he was little. People claimed hikers sometimes got lost there. Some said they heard children laughing between the trees. Others insisted there was an old house somewhere deep inside the forest. Ethan didn't believe any of it. That's why he went. He pushed through the first line of trees just after 4 in the afternoon. The sunlight was still strong enough to reach the ground. Birds moved through the branches above him. Dry leaves cracked beneath his shoes. Ethan opened his notebook. At the top of a fresh page, he wrote, Black Hollow, Field Notes. Then underneath, everyone says there's something strange in here. He smiled. Let's find out. For the next hour, Ethan followed the trail deeper into the forest. The village slowly disappeared behind him. No houses, no roads, no voices, only trees. Then he heard laughter. Children. Ethan stopped. The sound came from somewhere ahead. He pushed through a wall of bushes. And there they were, 5 children, 2 boys, 3 girls. They were playing beside an old stone wall. They looked around Ethan's age, maybe younger. Ethan smiled. Hey. The children stopped playing. Every one of them looked at him. Nobody spoke. Ethan raised his notebook. I'm writing about the forest. Do you live around here? The children stared. Then something strange happened. The youngest girl looked frightened. She grabbed the hand of the boy beside her and whispered something. Ethan couldn't hear what she said. The boy looked toward the trees behind Ethan. His expression changed. Then all 5 children ran, not away from Ethan, deeper into the forest. Ethan stood there confused. Wait, he followed them for several steps, but they were already gone. No footsteps, no voices, nothing. He looked down at his notebook, then noticed something he hadn't seen before, written across the page, in handwriting that wasn't his, were 4 words. Don't follow the children. Ethan's smile disappeared. He looked around. The forest suddenly felt different. The sun was lower now, much lower. He checked his phone. 6:41 p.m. His mother had already sent 3 messages. Where are you? Ethan quickly message failed. He tried again. Nothing. No signal. The light between the trees was fading quickly. Ethan turned around. He couldn't remember which direction he had come from. He walked back the way he thought he'd arrived. 5 minutes. 10. 20. The forest only became thicker. Then, through the trees, he saw a warm yellow light. A house. An old wooden house standing completely alone. Ethan stared at it. He was certain it hadn't been there before. Smoke curled from the chimney, and behind one of the upstairs windows, someone was watching him. A woman. She slowly raised one hand and waved. Ethan should have turned around. Instead, he walked toward the house. As he reached the front steps, the door opened by itself. The woman smiled. She looked old, very old, but her voice was gentle, almost comforting. "You're late." Ethan frowned. "Sorry." The woman looked at the notebook in his hand, then smiled again. "I've been waiting for you." Ethan swallowed. "Do I know you?" The woman stepped aside. Behind her, the house was warm, bright, inviting. She pointed toward the table. "Come inside." Then she added quietly, "You wanted a story, didn't you?" Ethan slowly stepped through the doorway. Behind him, the door closed, and somewhere deep inside the forest, 5 children were watching the house. They weren't playing anymore. They were waiting. Ethan remained near the doorway. The woman was still standing beside the table, waiting. He looked behind him. The front door was closed. He couldn't remember hearing it shut. "Are you lost?" the woman asked. Ethan nodded. "A little," she smiled. "Everyone who comes here says that." Ethan looked at her carefully. "Do you live here?" The woman gave a quiet laugh. "Not exactly." That answer made him uncomfortable. He glanced around the room. The house was strangely clean. There was a fireplace, an old wooden table, several dusty bookshelves, and dozens of photographs hanging on the walls. Ethan walked closer to them. Most showed children. Some were very old, some looked recent, but every photograph had something unusual. The children weren't smiling. They were all standing in the same forest, and in almost every photograph, there was a small wooden house somewhere behind them. Ethan turned toward the woman. "Who are they?" She didn't answer. Instead, she placed a cup of warm milk on the table. "You like writing stories?" Ethan looked at his notebook. "How do you know?" The woman smiled. "You wrote it on your first page." Ethan's stomach tightened. He hadn't shown her that page. He slowly opened the notebook. The first page was still there. Black hollow. Field notes. But underneath his original sentence, something new had appeared. "The boy came alone." Ethan stared at it. He hadn't written those words. "Did you do this?" The woman didn't answer. She pulled a chair away from the table. "Sit." Ethan hesitated, then sat down. The woman took another chair opposite him. "I'll tell you a story." Ethan immediately reached for his pen. That's what he had come for. A story. Something nobody in the village knew. The woman folded her hands. "This happened many years ago." Her voice became softer. "There was a girl who lived in a village not far from here. She was 13. Ethan stopped writing. The woman continued. "One evening, she was walking home. She took the old road through the forest. Nobody saw what happened next." The woman looked directly into Ethan's eyes. But something happened. Ethan wrote quickly. "What?" The woman smiled. "She was hit by a car." Ethan's pen stopped. "Did she die?" The woman nodded, but nobody found her. Her family searched for weeks. Police searched. Villagers searched. Nothing. Ethan frowned. Then where did she go? The woman's eyes moved toward the window. Someone found her before they did. The fire behind her suddenly crackled. Ethan looked toward it. What someone? The woman didn't answer immediately. When she finally spoke, her voice sounded different, lower, colder. A woman who lived in the forest. Ethan's pen moved across the paper. Was she a witch? The woman smiled. You tell me. Ethan looked up. The woman was still smiling, but something about her face had changed, only slightly. Her eyes seemed darker. He looked back down at his notebook. A new sentence appeared beneath what he'd written. She was hungry. Ethan's hand went cold. He hadn't written that either. He looked at the woman. She was watching him. Keep writing, she said. Outside, darkness had completely covered the forest. Ethan checked his phone. 9:18 p.m. No signal. He stood. I should go home. The woman didn't move. Your mother won't be expecting you tonight. Ethan stared at her. How do you know about my mother? The woman smiled. I know many things. Ethan suddenly felt the room becoming smaller. He grabbed his notebook. I really need to leave. The woman pointed toward the staircase. Your room is upstairs. Ethan frowned. My room. You'll need to sleep eventually. I never said I was staying. The woman looked at him. For the first time, her smile disappeared. You will. Ethan said nothing. He walked upstairs. At the top of the staircase was a narrow hallway, 3 doors. The woman pointed toward the middle one. That's yours? Ethan opened it. A small bedroom, a bed, a wooden desk, and a window overlooking the forest. He placed his notebook on the desk before closing the door. He looked back at the woman. She was still standing at the bottom of the stairs, watching him. Good night, Ethan. He slowly closed the door, then locked it. For several minutes, nothing happened. Ethan sat on the bed. He opened his notebook again. He wanted to finish the story, but when he looked at the page, his blood ran cold. The last sentence wasn't there anymore. Instead, the entire page contained a single line, written in the woman's handwriting. The girl wasn't the only one who was hungry. Ethan stared at it. Then, from somewhere downstairs, he heard something fall, crash. He stood. Another sound followed, something dragging across the kitchen floor. Slowly. Then, a child's voice whispered from downstairs, "Help me." Ethan moved toward the door. The voice came again. This time, closer. Please. I don't want to stay here. Ethan reached for the doorknob, then stopped, because he suddenly remembered the children in the forest and the words that had appeared in his notebook. Don't follow the children. He stepped away from the door. The sound from downstairs stopped. For several seconds, nothing. Then, 3 soft scratches appeared on the other side of his bedroom door. Ethan stared at it. Something was standing outside. And then, a woman's voice whispered through the wood. You should have finished the story. Ethan didn't move. His eyes remained fixed on the bedroom door. Something was on the other side. He could hear it breathing, slowly, patiently, waiting. Then the voice came again. You should have finished the story. Ethan stepped backward. Who are you? Nothing. He reached for the desk and grabbed his notebook. The scratches continued, one, then another, moving slowly across the wooden door. Ethan opened the notebook. The page was blank. He picked up his pen. If you want the story finished. His voice trembled. Tell me what happened to the girl. The scratching stopped. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the door handle began to move, slowly. Ethan backed toward the window. The handle turned halfway, stopped, then returned to its original position. A whisper came through the door. "Come downstairs." Ethan shook his head. "No." The voice changed. It became younger. A little girl's voice. "Please." Ethan closed his eyes. He knew that voice. It sounded exactly like one of the children he'd seen in the forest. "Who are you?" The answer came immediately. The girl she told you about. Ethan's eyes opened. He waited. 5 minutes. 10. Nothing. Finally, he unlocked the door. The hallway was empty. The woman was gone. Ethan slowly walked downstairs. The living room was dark. Only the fire remained. He looked toward the kitchen. The door was slightly open. A faint smell drifted through the room. Something metallic, something unpleasant. Ethan covered his nose. "Hello?" No answer. He pushed the kitchen door open. The room was empty. Pots hung from the ceiling. A wooden table stood against the wall. An old refrigerator hummed in the corner. Then, something moved behind it. Ethan froze. A shoe slid across the floor. Then another. He stared. They weren't attached to feet. They were just there. 2 children's shoes. Beside them, a small hand. Ethan stumbled backward. Another hand slowly appeared from behind the refrigerator. Then, a head rolled into view. Ethan covered his mouth. It was the face of a child. Eyes open, skin pale, completely still. Then another head rolled beside it, and another. The kitchen wasn't a kitchen anymore. It was a place where someone had been keeping things that should never have been kept. Ethan turned to run and saw the woman standing in the doorway. She was smiling, but her face wasn't right. Her skin seemed stretched too tightly over her bones. Her eyes were almost completely black. Her mouth opened, far wider than any human mouth should. "Ethan." Her voice wasn't one voice anymore. It was many, children, women, men, all speaking at once. You wanted to know what happened to the girl. Ethan couldn't move. The woman stepped closer. "She was never found." She smiled. "Because I found her." Ethan grabbed the nearest chair and threw it toward her. The chair passed straight through her. She didn't even move. Ethan ran. He burst through the front door. The forest was completely dark. He didn't care which direction he was going. He just ran. Branches tore at his clothes. Roots caught his feet. Behind him, the woman laughed, not loudly. She didn't need to. The sound seemed to follow him through the trees. Ethan saw lights ahead. The road. He pushed harder, almost there. Then, headlights appeared. A vehicle came around the corner. Ethan stepped into the road. The driver slammed on the brakes. A horn screamed. Then, everything disappeared. Ethan opened his eyes. He was standing in the forest. No road, no car, no house, nothing. The moon hung above him. He looked down. His notebook was still in his hand. He opened it. A new page had appeared. His own handwriting filled the page, but he hadn't written it. The boy ran from the house. Ethan turned the page. The boy reached the road. Another page. The boy was hit. Another. His hands began trembling. The next page contained only one sentence. The boy never left the forest. Ethan looked up. 5 children were standing between the trees, the same children he'd seen earlier. But now, they weren't running. The youngest girl stepped forward. She looked at Ethan with sad eyes. "We tried to warn you," Ethan whispered. "Warn me about what?" She pointed behind him. Ethan slowly turned. The old house stood there. Only now, there was something different about it. Every window was filled with faces. Children, dozens of them, watching him. The woman appeared on the porch. She raised one hand and smiled. The little girl beside Ethan whispered, "She doesn't need to catch you." Ethan looked at her. "Then what does she want?" The girl pointed toward his notebook. "She wants you to finish writing." Ethan opened the notebook. The final page was blank, except for one line at the top. Chapter 4. Ethan's story. His pen was already lying beneath it, and somewhere behind him. The woman began laughing. Ethan stared at the final page. Chapter 4. Ethan's story. His fingers trembled around the pen. The little girl beside him whispered, "Don't write your name." Ethan looked at her. "Why?" She didn't answer. Instead, she pointed toward the house. The woman was still standing on the porch, watching, waiting. Ethan opened his mouth. "What happens if I finish it?" The girl looked at him with tears in her eyes. "Then she gets to keep you." Ethan looked down at the notebook. The first sentence was already appearing. Letters slowly forming across the page, without the pen touching it. Ethan looked at the girl and asked what would happen if he finished the story. Ethan stopped breathing. The sentence was describing what was happening as it happened. He turned the page. Another sentence appeared. He realized the notebook was no longer recording his story. Another line appeared. It was writing his future. Ethan slammed the notebook shut. No. He threw it onto the ground. The book landed in the leaves. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the pages began turning by themselves, faster, faster, until they stopped. The little girl stared at the open book. Her face suddenly changed. "Ethan." "What?" "Look." At the bottom of the page, a sentence appeared. "Ethan will run." Ethan looked toward the road, then back at the house. The woman was gone. He grabbed the notebook and ran. The children followed. Branches whipped past Ethan's face. The forest seemed different now. Every path looked familiar. Every tree seemed to lead him back toward the same place. The road. He could see it ahead. Headlights appeared through the darkness. Ethan ran toward them. A car was approaching. He stepped onto the road. The driver slammed the brakes. The world exploded into white light. Then, nothing. Ethan opened his eyes. He was lying on the road. His body felt strangely light. The rain had started. He tried to move. Nothing happened. Then he heard someone crying. A woman. He turned his head. The old witch was standing beside him, except she wasn't looking at Ethan. She was looking toward the forest. The children were standing there, watching. The little girl slowly walked toward Ethan. "Ethan." He tried to answer, but no sound came out. The girl looked at him sadly. "You understand now." Ethan looked down and finally saw what had happened. There were no wounds, no blood, no pain, because he wasn't inside his body anymore. He was standing beside it, watching his own body lying motionless on the road. The witch crouched beside him. Her face changed again. The old woman disappeared. The thing underneath smiled. "You wanted a story." Ethan stared at her. She held out her hand. "And now, you have one." The next morning, villagers found Ethan's notebook beside the road. His body was gone. The police searched the forest. They found nothing. No car, no tire marks, no footprints, nothing. Only the notebook. His mother read the first few pages, then stopped, because the final pages contained something impossible. The story continued. After Ethan's disappearance, it described the search, the police, his mother crying, the villagers entering the forest. Every detail. including things that hadn't happened yet. The final page contained only one sentence. If you're reading this, and underneath it, another sentence slowly appeared. She knows you're here. 3 months later, Ethan's mother couldn't bring herself to throw the notebook away. She kept it inside a locked drawer. One night, at exactly 2:13 a.m., she woke to the sound of pages turning. She walked downstairs. The drawer was open. The notebook was lying on the table, open. A fresh page was waiting. Her hands trembled as she approached it. There was already something written. Not about Ethan, not about the forest, not about the witch. It was about her. Ethan's mother walked toward the table. She stepped backward. Another sentence appeared. She reached for the notebook. She stopped. Then, one final line appeared. She should not have touched it. Her hand froze above the page. From somewhere outside the house, children began laughing. Then a little girl's voice whispered through the window, "Baba." The woman looked toward the glass. A small hand slowly appeared against the other side. Then another, and another. 5 children stood outside, watching her. Behind them, in the darkness, stood the old woman, smiling. The notebook's final page turned by itself, and one last sentence appeared. The story needs another writer. That was tonight's story. If it made you think twice before following a stranger into the woods or accepting a story from someone you don't know, then perhaps you already understand why Ethan should never have picked up that pen. If you enjoyed tonight's mystery, don't forget to subscribe to The Unseen Hour, because the next story may already be waiting somewhere you haven't looked yet. Until next time, lock your doors, keep the lights on, and remember, some hours were never meant to be seen. Good night.